The fist of civilized beasts. In an age not far removed from our own, though draped in finer hypocrisy, there stood a glittering empire, believed itself civilized. In a world that congratulated itself daily for having outgrown barbarism, the knives had simply grown quieter. They no longer dripped in public squares. Instead, they fell from sky, efficient, sanitized, and accompanied by statements. It was a land that spoke endlessly of peace while polishing its swords. A nation whose banners read liberty, but whose footprints whispered dominion. At the center of this refined brutality stood the Grand Republic of Oromia, a self-appointed custodian of order, liberty, and selective memory. Its ruler, Lord Dodo, was the marvel of modern leadership. He possessed the rare ability to speak at length without saying anything meaningful, and yet somehow to say enough to justify everything. A man of remarkable confidence and uncertain comprehension. His speeches wandered like lost caravans, and his decisions arrived with the speed of storms but the depth of puddles. And at the helm a curious king, whose words could mean almost anything. He spoke in storms, in endless flow, yet left behind no truth to know. His thoughts arrived without delay, though sense was often led astray. A shallow pool, a thunder space, a fitting mind for such a place. Still, he was adored by many, for in him they saw not wisdom but spectacle, no restraint but the comforting illusion of strength. Subtlety had never touched him. His words came unfiltered, his thoughts unburdened by hesitation. He mistook impulse for instinct, ignorance for authenticity, and contradiction for strategy. His admirers called him bold, his critics called him dangerous. History, if it were honest, would call him a useful evil. Someone like him never rises alone, he is lifted. For such a man does not ascend by merit's path or honest end. He rises where the hands agree, lift him up collectively. Now the question remains, on whose shoulder does the blame finally rest? Or does the weight of guilt drift through silent consent, where no single person stand accused, yet all are in some way complicit? The whisper architect, on the far side of sovereign's chair, in rooms where decision o'er softer shoes, lived the architect of consequence, the fox. Behind the throne where silence schemes, where policy walks on muffled dreams. There lived the fox, no crown, no cry, yet kingdoms shift when he walks by. Often unseen, rarely absent, he moved quietly along the edges of power. Lord Netta, a creature of cunning whisper and ancient grievances. His words were never loud, yet they bent the air. He spoke not in commands, but in suggestions that felt like inevitabilities. He did not rage, he curated. Facts in his hands became suggestions. Suggestions became narratives. Narratives became truth. Not by proof, but by reputation. Danger grows in the east, he would murmur. The lion is preparing. No one asked, preparing for what? No one ever saw the lion preparing, yet they saw the charts, the diagrams, the projections. Numbers rose and fell like tides, each one framed with just enough urgency to demand action. The lion cannot be trusted. No one asks, trusted with what? And soon the question themselves become suspicious. Thus, without urgency being proven, urgency was declared. And the genius Lord Dodo, eager as ever to perform decisiveness, obliged. We cannot wait, he proclaimed. And Dodo rises, loud, assured, mistaking noise for something pure. I act, he cries, for time is thin. Each echoes clap from deep within. We cannot wait, the chorus grows, though none can say what danger shows. For waiting asks a slower mind, and patience leaves no stage behind. Waiting, after all, requires patience. The lion that refused to die quietly. Beyond the deserts and broken treaties lay Persica, a land as old as memory and as proud as silence. There ruled no king of theatrics, but a system hardened by siege and suspicion. Its symbol was the wounded lion, scarred, isolated, yet unyielding. It was not an innocent land, no nation is. It carried its own ambitions, its own shadows, its own history of pride and defiance. For years, sanction has gnawed at its bones. Slow, methodical starvation guised as diplomacy. Economic chains tightened year after year. Threats moved from whispers to warning, from warning to declarations. Sanctions beat like unseen chains. Slow starvation masked as gains. Numbers fell where lives once grew, and quiet suffering nobody knew. The lion had learned to survive in isolation. It had long ago stopped expecting fairness. Medicine grew scarce, currency withered, ordinary lives became collateral in war, politely denied. Oromia called it pressure, the lion called it siege. And yet, when the lion clenched its jaw and refused to collapse, it was labeled aggressive. When Oromia tightened its grip, cutting trade, suffocating currency, squeezing the life from ordinary people, it called this a strategy. There is a peculiar logic in civilized cruelty. To strangle a man is a strategy. To resist strangulation is provocation. For years, whispers has painted the lion as a monster. Charts were drawn, numbers proclaimed, invisible weapons described in vivid detail. Fear was manufactured with the precision of fine glass. Imminent threat, declared the scholars of Oromia. Necessary action, echoed its allies. And so, without the courtesy of provocation, or with provocation carefully imagined, Oromia sharpened its claws. When the strikes came, precise, justified, inevitable, they were announced before the smoke had cleared. Defensive measures, the phrase drifted gently over the rubble. Innocents coughed beneath collapsed ceilings. Trading places turned to ash. The world witnessed, unimpressed. The dead, as always, were called nothing at all. Beneath, the roofs collapsed in grey, and children coughed the dust away. Markets burned to silent flames, where history watched, unmoved by names. The dead were counted, then erased, their absence filed, their loss displaced. And the lion, did not fall, it stood alone. The kingdoms of decorative concern. To the south, beneath the chandeliers that cost more than cities, sat the kings of sand. Their cities glittered, the towers pierced the sky, their palaces overflowed with excess so vast it seemed almost unreal. Within their halls, fountains danced, while beyond the borders, entire population struggled to breathe under the weight of conflict. They were men of immense vision, provided that vision did not exceed beyond their own survival. Their speeches were immaculate, their inaction even more so. They condemned violence with the same sincerity one used to remark upon the weather. Regrettable, yes, but not actionable. Speech refined to polished art, silence played the stronger part. They condemned with measured tone, like one nothing withers grown. For action invite consequence, and consequence threatens comfort. So they hosted summits, signed papers, and issued statements so polished they reflected nothing at all. So they gathered, spoke with grace, signed their names in empty space, crafted words so smooth, so bright, they reflected nothing of sight. Meanwhile, suffering unfolded within the sight of their world. It is whispered quietly, always quietly, that a single night of royal indulgence could sustain a besieged city for months. But such arithmetics is never performed aloud. Numbers, after all, can be inconvenient. But such sums are left unsaid. Numbers speak what must be dead. And whispers, soft as desert air, carry truth but vanish there. And whispers, unlike oil, do not generate power. So they remain whispers. Gaza, the mathematics of disposability. There exists a place where time does not glide forward. It resets. Gaza, a place by the waters. Time moves, but not here. It turns again, resets its will, repeats its pain. Gaza, by the restless sea, a city caught in misery. Here, destruction is not an event, but a cycle. Children learn to distinguish the sound of drones before they learn to spell their names. Restoring is less an act of hope than an act of defiance. Every attack is illustrated. Every explanation is recorded. Each record ensures the next assault will require less explanation. Rebuilding rises, a stubborn flame. No hope, but protest against the same. Each strike explained, each reason stored, each archive makes the next strike ignored. Oromia labels it security. The fox labels it necessity. Oromia calls it safety, something to be shielded. The fox proclaims what power must be wielded. Those who live beneath the rubble cry, their voices lost beneath the sky. People who lived underneath the wreckage call it something else entirely, but their voices, the outcry of the oppressed, rarely travel far. Civilization observes Gaza the way one oversees a distant fire, concerned perhaps, yet unmoved. The world observes, polite, remote, like watching fires in some far-off mode. Concern is murmured, action delayed, as if justice could be politely swayed. And so it is called complicated, for complicated is the most convenient word ever invented to excuse the unbearable. The assembly of elegant uselessness. There is the assembly of nations, an edifice to commitment, an archive of paralysis. Behold the assembly of nations, a monument raised to intentions, a museum curated by hesitations, where voices drift through polished air and death dissolves in practiced care. In the grand hall of the assembly, born from humanity's greatest regret, men and women gathered to speak in tones so refined one might forget they are discussing death. Delegates arrive from every corner of the earth to speak, condemn, urge, request, recommend. They are excellent at speaking. For in the assembly, power does not reside in morality but in permission, and permission is rarely granted. Resolutions are drafted in clinical precision, every sentence balanced, every word acceptable, every outcome avoidable. Resolution shaped with surgical grace, each sentence measured, each word in place, each outcome softened, carefully blurred, a triumph of language untouched by deed or word. Immediate ceasefire, deep concern, strongly worded regret. If statements could stop bullets, this chamber would have ended all conflicts. If words were weapons to hold the flame, no war would endure, no loss remain. Yet words without action are echoes that fade, a theatre of mercy politely displayed. But speeches are most potent when followed by action, and here action depends on the consent of those who benefit most from doing nothing. Therefore, the assembly continues, majestic, eloquent, and profoundly irrelevant. So the assembly persists, refined, composed, articulate halls where truth is enclosed. A chamber of echoes, dignified, vast, where humanity waits and the world burns just beyond its glass. Volpone and the art of protection. Long ago, the nations of the world chose a guardian, a mighty one, to protect their fragile peace. They appointed a guardian, not the most just, not the most restrained, not a lion, not a wise owl, but the most powerful, a fox named Volpone, clever, resourceful, persuasive. So the fox became protector. At first, it worked. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the protector began to choose what to protect. Might ensures peace, they said, and Volpone agreed. And who better than one who understands power? Strength ensure peace, the nations cried. Volpone nodded, eyes sharp, eyes wide. And who can guard with wiser hand than one who knows how power commands? It ensured peace where peace was profitable. It ensured conflict where conflict was useful. They believed, perhaps naively, that strength would ensure safety. But the fox, as foxes do, had its own cravings. And the chickens it was meant to guard began to wonder were they being protected or prepped. But foxes, as foxes, had appetites deep, and not even the smallest were safe in their keep. The chickens it guarded began to suspect were they truly protected or being prepped. The smaller nations, dedicated, hopeful creatures, were left to ask themselves the same question: was it safeguarding or just management? The smaller nations, trembling, meek, asked the same, unable to speak: are we shielded or merely tamed, managed by the fox, unnamed, unnamed? The industry of fear. Fear in this world was never accidental. It is not discovered. It is manufactured, sculpted, calculated, supplied. Fear is never born by chance. It is not found, it is forged by hands. Crafted, measured, distributed wide, a quiet army no one can deride. Statistics appear authoritative, unchallengeable, often unverified. Threats are described with such vivid certainty that doubt itself begins to look irresponsible. To query is to commiserate, to be reluctant is to endanger. And so the public, eager for safety, becomes eager to believe. To question is to sympathize, to hesitate invites demise. The public, hungry for safe reprieve, greedily swallows what they believe. This is the intellect of it. You do not need truth when you have agreement. You do not need testimony when you have reputation. Stories are told, repeated, polished. This is the genius, cold and clear. Truth is useless when consensus steers. Evidence fades where reputation reigns. Stories retold in polished chains. Those who ask for proof are told that they do not understand the urgency. In time, the fear sustains itself. Once fear is accepted, everything else becomes acceptable. Proof is dismissed, questions denied. Fear feeds itself, grows in pride. Once fear is welcomed, nurtured, sustained, everything else becomes unchained. Civilization's favorite lie. The greatest achievement of this world is not its technology, nor its wealth, nor its institutions. It is its ability to commit violence, yet feeling virtuous. The world's greatest triumph is not its gold, nor its machines, nor the laws it holds. It is the skill to strike, yet feel clean, to cloak destruction in a righteous sheen, to destroy and call it defense, to dominate and call it order, to remain silent and call it neutrality. There was a time when brutality required justification, when a man, a nation, or a ruler could be called to account for the lives they crushed, the homes they burned, the land they stole. There were witnesses, words, and conscience. Now, justification is the brutality, the act of framing it, of calling it necessary, inevitable, or righteous is enough. The narrative replaces the deed. The story becomes proof. The lie wears the robe of morality. Now, cruelty needs no proof. Its framing alone becomes the truth. Call it necessary, righteous, just, and the deed itself dissolves to dust. Story swells, the lie wears white, morality dressed for public sight. In this way, devastation works freely through the world under the guise of protection. Invasion marches as security. Bombs fall as diplomacy. Silence is dressed in civility. Destruction walks in protection's name. Occupation parades, bombs fall as tame. Silence drapes as civility's guise, while the world applauds unseeing eyes. And the world nods in approval, because comfort is found not in truth, but in the belief that virtue can live alongside cruelty. The age of the inevitable. And so we arrive again at this place where the world moves forward with a steady face, confident in posture, divided in will, certain in voice, yet dangerously still. The mankind proceeds frontward, confident, divided, certain, not at hostilities, no, by no means warfare, at necessity, at inevitability. No war, they insist, no, never by name, not by necessity's logic, inexorability's claim. A moment rehearsed through history's page, where each side feels trapped inside its own cage. At that familiar point in history where every side believes it has no choice, tensions tighten like drawn bows, alliances shift like desert sands, weapons grow quieter yet deadlier. Each nation convinces itself of righteousness, each leader convinces himself of indispensability. The moment arrives when diplomacy is impairment and force becomes clarity. When no one believes they are choosing war, only that they are left with no other choice. And then comes the turn, so familiar, so clear, where dialogue weakens and force feels sincere. No one admits they are choosing the fight, only that all other paths slipped out of sight. And somewhere beneath the noise, humanity holds its breath. The lion stands, bleeding but unbroken. The fox whispers, undefeated. Lord Dodo declares, unrestrained. The kings observe, undisturbed. The lion stands wounded, yet refuses to fall. The fox moves in whispers, shaping it all. Lord Dodo speaks louder, unbound, unrestrained. The kings sit in comfort, untouched, unpained. And the rest of the world, it watches the rise. It measures the risk. It quietly decides that waiting is safer than drawing a line, as if time will resolve what they will not define, as though catastrophe requires their leave, as though permission alone could make it ease. Final reflection, the price of knowing. Perhaps the greatest wonder is not the powerful's desire, not the suffering borne by those caught in the fire. It is the stillness of the rest, calm in their chair, watching the world burn, pretending not to care. It seems the most remarkable thing wasn't the ambition of the powerful, nor the suffering of the vulnerable, but the quiet stillness of everyone else. The tragedy of this age is not the ignorance, it is awareness without consequence. People know, nations know, leaders know, and yet knowing has become performance, something to express, not to act upon. So the fires continue, the statements continue, the suffering continues. Somewhere quietly, history prepares to repeat itself, not because it must, but because once again no one stopped it. The lion stands, wounded yet unbowed. The fox whispers, unseen but proud. Lord Dodo proclaims, louder each day. The kings recline, measuring comfort against dismay. And the world, balanced on a thin and trembling age, moves forward, not because it does not know, but because it does not act. Let there be peace.